Chapter 28, Gravitation. Gravitation is perhaps the most vexing enigma in the history of physics. It was long considered to be Newton's attractive force between masses. Later, gravity came to be understood more accurately as Einstein's curvature of space-time, which guides matter toward the center of gravitation. However, the metaphor of curvature of space-time does not capture the more fundamental reality which governs this enigmatic phenomenon. In the ongoing description of gravity, there remain defining features yet unbeknownst. The line hypothesis suggests that gravity is the effect more fundamentally caused, at all scales, by the transfer of information from within this space-time into the metaverse. It is this localized information drain which produces the directed acceleration in matter currently described as the space-time curvature known as gravity. Einstein showed that gravitation, to some useful degree of accuracy, may be regarded as a curvature of the dimensions we referred to as space-time. The line hypothesis suggests that this description of gravity can be further refined as a stretching of space-time in the presence of certain degrees of freedom, or DOF, of matter, that is, mass, which locally deforms other hidden dimensions. These hidden dimensions, described as Planck holes, or pH, are undilated or curled up in vacuum and therefore interact minimally. These lower dimensions, long predicted by string theory, not only proliferate this universe, but are a defining DOF of the fabric of space-time. pH causes space to behave as a porous membrane for information and certain degrees of freedom indigenous to the metaverse. pH are the key to many features of this universe. For example, pH are the conduits which establish the flow of information into the metaverse, which cumulatively produces the effect known as gravitation in this universe. pH are also the conduits which establish the quantum teleportation channels with the metaverse, or Hilbert space, that permit the coherent sharing of state information, known as quantum entanglement. Furthermore, as the Higgs field imbues matter with mass, it is the Higgs field that is directly responsible for pH dilation and thereby gravitation. Like a bullet shot through water, mass is imbued to certain configurations of particles by the Higgs field, as it imparts a rendering latency upon all such entities. By this interaction, matter lingers in space-time and thereby affects the vacuum by dilating its pH, and produces all of the effects that come with it. pH are Planck scale dimensions which act as drains or pores in the fabric of space-time. pH are the holes which may become sufficiently dilated by sufficiently high mass densities to produce a sufficiently high transfer of information into the metaverse, ergo, gravitation, which becomes capable of capturing light and thereby causing a Planck hole to become a black hole. Metaphorically, pHs may be compared to the openings between the threads in fabrics. The effect of the presence of increasingly larger mass densities, or some other property of matter, upon the pH is to stretch or widen their teleportation bandwidth. This locally induced pH dilation proportionally increases the rate of information drain into the underlying metaverse. This is what produces the effect of gravitation toward the center of mass. The cause of the nonlinear, stretched or curved space-time around matter produced by pH dilation in the presence of matter and the information drain it produces is due to the affected space being rendered unable to translate a Higgs-affected entity's entire information budget linearly from one pH regime to another, as it does in the undilated space of the vacuum. Hence, the transiting entity's most vulnerable information states, often its momentum and position, is absorbed to produce a shift or movement in position to fill the information deficit. This is nothing more than the law of conservation of information at work. On the Planck scale, this shift in position is always away from less dilated pH of the vacuum and toward regions of more dilated pH. This shift accumulates to produce the acceleration and trajectory adjustment referred to as gravitation. This information transfer occurs in this universe due to the porosity of the fabric of space-time. Further, this porosity is never zero, and is affected by all Higgs-constrained entities of non-zero mass density, among others. At one extreme, pH are stretched open by high mass densities to become black holes. The gravitating, abyssal cosmic torrents of information transfer from this universe into the metaverse. Similarly, at the other extreme, pH also produces the subtle but ultimately pivotal teleportation channels needed for the emergence of individuality. This permits a far more diminutive transfer of information to metamatter during the course of each lifetime. This occurs by the low mass density particles within the living cell called the entanglement molecule, or EM. Within the realm between these two extremes lies the potential of gravitation to manifest planets, stars, solar systems, and galaxies. As a consequence, life must stay far clear of the region of influence of black holes, which likely extends far beyond the event horizon, not because of the physical danger to the host form, but due to the entropic turbulence which may cause the destruction of the delicate information states imprinted upon metamatter. This delicate imprinting by the living form is required to maintain a stable FT, which promotes the prospects for reinstantiation of an individual's QEF. Humankind's attempts to calculate information retention in black holes give rise to ideas such as the holographic principle. This amounts to an attempt, unbeknownst, to map this universe's dimensions of space-time onto the metaverse. However, such ideas, although headed in the right direction, are as nondescript as would be attempts by Mario to map the dimensions of his virtual realm onto this universe. This is because, via the pH, information is not lost, but transferred or teleported into the metaverse. Particles of all kinds are congealed from information gained into this universe. Particles are formed by a combination of pH dilation during a period of universal latency appropriate for the creation of specific particles. The very low universal latency in the first instance of the Big Bang was initially inappropriate for the creation of pH and particles. Hence, the rendering rate during that very early period of the universal expansion, known as inflation, was too high for the formation of the known forces, energy, or matter. Not until the universal information load into the early universe reached a threshold, causing a rise in universal latency and a type of universal viscosity and a slowing of the rendering rate, did the fabric of space-time coalesce and its defining features, among them the pH, formed to become functional conduits for the exchange of information with the metaverse able to produce particles, known or unknown, and the forces they carry. We currently live in the very stable low universal latency epoch of the Big Bang event. The health of any verse is described by the stability of its information budget. That is, the state of information loss and gain which describes the universal expansion or contraction. A healthy universe is one which, by this balance, maintains the physics necessary for the existence of instantiated POV, life. Physics will differ among verses, but the health of any verse lies in its stability in maintaining its necessary information budget for individuality. Loss of information is the transfer of the information initially gained at the Big Bang and since back into the metaverse. This transfer is continuous and ongoing due to the natural formation of all manner of Higgs-affected entities which describe various mass or other property densities which dilate the pH to various degrees ranging from the subtle to the extreme. The transfer of information back into the metaverse is not only the phenomenon which causes gravitation, but also the phenomenon which implements life. As swirling water guides more water, and also any object caught therein, into an open drain, so too on macroscopic and cosmic scales does this flow of information produce the seemingly analogous effect of guiding matter toward the center of information teleportation into the metaverse. However, this effect is not at all equivalent to the familiar phenomenon seen in fluid dynamics, but is a quantum informational manifestation born of the interaction of the metaverse with this space-time. In low-mass particles and diminutive collections thereof, this information transfer is very weak, and likewise, so is its gravitation. pH dilation may be affected by properties other than mass. This is suggested by the observed effects of massless yet gravitational entities such as dark matter. The aberration seen as dark energy is due to the reduction of universal latency caused by the universal transfer of information over time and in sufficient magnitude into the metaverse via the pH, ergo gravity. However, the effect of this information drain is not via its gravitation, but because it also produces an increase in the universal rendering rate, which not only changes the speed of light, but more fundamentally results in a measurable increase in the rendering of cosmic distances to give rise to the accelerated expansion of space-time, ergo dark energy. What a wonderfully elegant chain of cause and effect does nature conjure. So how might one prove that the pH exists? Perhaps for the first time in the history of science, fundamental cosmological and physics questions may be answerable by a microbiological test. The discovery of the line hypothesized entanglement cell, or EC, and entanglement molecule, or EM, would present an initial basis for the description and function of the pH. The quantum teleportation channel, which describes the instantiated POV which defines individuality in every living entity, is made possible only given the existence and function of the pH as described by the line hypothesis. As the Big Bang is born from an immense infusion of information transferred into this space-time, so too is the ongoing evolution of this universe, its expansions and its contractions, mediated by the ongoing information transfer by matter densities great and small throughout these cosmos. The current phase of universal evolution may be dominated largely by information being transferred out of this universe and into the metaverse. The viability, or health, if you will, of any verse is characterized by the stability of its information budget to essentially maintain a universal ecosystem of information and manifestations thereof for the continued evolution of life.